Hi, welcome to the inaugural episode of Reality of Behavior, where we break down the behavioral principles that are seen in popular reality TV shows. I'm Lauren Ross,
And I am Sarah Foster.
and we are both board certified behavior analysts, which means we look at behavior in all environments to mitigate any maladaptive behaviors, also build skill sets for clients. And this can be adults and children. Oftentimes you see us BCBAs in clinical settings, but in this time we're going to break down some principles that we see in popular TV shows. So
Yes,
what's our first show today?
I was going to say adults and children and reality TV stars.
And reality TV stars.
The first show that we're going to chat about today is Love is Blind. So for those of you who are not familiar with Love is Blind, first of all, Netflix, watch it. It's so good. But it's like a social experiment where they take single men, single women that live in the same area. So I think this is, what is this, season 6?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
This
season
is
6 is
definitely
based
season
in is based in Charlotte. So all the women and men live in Charlotte. And they're all looking for love. And some of them even get engaged prior to even seeing each other or meeting in person. So it's all under the preface of like, is love blind? Can you form that level of relationship without even like seeing each other? So there's a lot
There's
to
a lot to
dissect.
unpack. This was my first time ever watching this show.
Which is wild. I'm like obsessed with the show every single season. But when you said this is your first time, does this make you want to watch the other ones?
It does. It makes me want to go back and see, especially during the reunion when other people showed up. And I was like, oh, wow, like
Yes.
couples are still
Mhm.
together. And
They
one of the
having
things,
babies.
yeah, I know. I wanted to look up, and for our next episode, I will look up this statistic of what is the statistic of couples that stay together following the show.
That would be a very interesting stat to have.
I
I
know.
feel like
And
it's not
compare,
incredibly high, but there are some. There are some.
but if you look at like other shows like The Bachelor, I'm blanking on other.
I was going to just say any of the other dating shows.
Exactly.
Yep. I know. So this first episode, because Love is Blind, lots of content. Lots and lots of content. So this first episode, we're going to focus on the pods. So for those of you who do not know, the pods are like 2 rooms that are divided by just one wall. So they're back to back to each other, but you can't see the other person. And so couples will go in there and chat for hours. And they have arranged dates, but then it seems like from a viewer's perspective that like once they're interested in someone, they kind of are like, these people can go. I want to focus on so and so. And so this is how they are just getting to know each other. So this episode, we are just going to talk about the pods and see where we can see some behavior analytic concepts in the pods.
Yeah. So first off, episode 1, they're introducing all the couples. Everyone's getting in the pods. They're excited. And so the first principle that I noted was probing. So we're going to break down the term plus what it means in behavioral stance, and then kind of how we were seeing it. So probing is how someone does a specific task. So measuring how someone is doing something. And it's kind of like a get to know you. This is the essential blind date that everyone is having.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, like everyone's different ways of probing. You have some that are like very just naturalistic and they go based on the other person's, what they're talking about, and they're able to continue on the conversation and keep things connected. And then you have people like Matthew who come in with like a full-blown list, numbered questions, little more rigid probing.
Yes. Oh, but I liked so it's 15 guys, 15 girls. He came in with a list of 15 questions. And I really want to know his mindset. Did he think like each person would pick a different number?
Well, I think he expected that because you remember when someone like was like number 4 and he's like, well, number 4's been asked multiple times. Like, Matthew, none of us know what you've asked other people. Why do you care?
It's
He's
blind.
like, maybe we'll try something different.
Well, I think it'd be different if he said pick a number 1 through 3 are like then 5 through 15. But yeah, he's looking for a list and I think the question that I'm trying to remember the exact question that was asked.
Which one, Matthew?
Yeah, it's like, what's a perfect evening for you or a perfect weekend?
Oh, yes. Yes, because that was the one where what oh, no, I'm trying to think. Do you remember who he asked that to?
He asked that to I think Amber.
Okay,
And
okay.
she said go to a festival, get coffee, which I think is like
Yes,
a perfect
yes.
thing.
Hike. Yep.
Yes. And then I love that when he asked Sarah Ann a question, he just walked away. So when anytime we're looking at behavior, there are four main functions of behavior.
Mhm.
And so do you want to should we run through these, Sarah? The
Yeah,
four
let's run through
functions of
them.
behavior.
Let's
Okay.
run through them.
So
Go ahead.
the first function and what this presented was escape avoidance. So he is escaping that situation by just walking out of the room. Then we have automatic, so something we do self-soothing that can be simple like itching, scratching your nose.
I was gonna say, just like
I
I
know.
just did.
I know, something you just did. And then we have attention, so doing something for attention. I think this one is something we don't see that function in pods because
True. Well, here's the thing. They already
undivided
have
attention.
attention. It's the two of them sitting there. They can't do anything more. You know, they're sitting in there talking. So I don't think that we necessarily see a desire or a behavior that is trying to elicit attention because they've already
There.
had
It's
it.
1-to-1.
Yep.
It's all day attention.
Yep.
And then we see access. So having access to something, which once again, like they have access to that person. They can't see them, but
Yep.
it's there. So I wanted to kind of bring that up as we're talking about
Yeah.
probing.
But Matthew, that was very interesting where you know, when was it Amber that asked him the same question that he asked her back? And then he was like, well, I didn't think we were gonna do it both ways. And I'm like, his level of probing was so terrible.
I
So
just
terrible and not reciprocal at all.
I just want to know what level of prep he put into that. He was like, "Yep, I'm just going to go in and shotgun fire this list of questions and walk out."
I know. He's an interesting one. And I feel like we'll touch on him more at the end. Um
Foreshadowing.
exactly. Stay
But
tuned.
yeah, and then the part that made me like cringe with probing though was when Chelsea's like, "Name 5 things that make you
You
make you
happy?
happy."
Trevor's response. First of all, this is a very not behavior analytic comment, but I'm going to say it anyways. Cringe. Full
Yes.
blown cringe. What did he say? Dogs, like a sunny day. But what
A
really
romantic
got me,
movie, fresh cut grass.
yes. But when
It's like
he
this.
said the notebook, duh, I was like, and a walk to remember, was that the other one?
Yes.
I think it
Yes.
was. I was like,
I
send
just
help.
with Sweet Trevor, like I just really there's a lot to unpack with him, and I'm sure we're gonna
Yes.
get into more of it, but I really just
Yes.
want to give him a prescription to go see a dermatologist. Like
Poor guy.
the poor man. He just seems like his heart is in the right place. I mean at this point. We'll get into more of that. But I just want him to go see a dermatologist so badly.
I know. Girl, same. But, you know, again, like with the probing, you saw like between every single couple, everyone had their own ways of doing it. Some of them were more like obvious than others. Like some seemed a lot more natural than other people. But I mean, ultimately, that's a big focus of the pods because you're trying to get to know someone without physically seeing them. And speaking of that, I feel like we can get into a little bit of verbal operants,
Ooh, my fave.
right?
Yes.
So, verbal operants, you know, and it really, since they only have the ability to talk and have conversations, they're not able to see, they're not able to smell, they're not able to touch, they're not able to taste. That one's so weird. But they're not.
It is a unused sense here.
It is not for me. No, just kidding.
In this setting. It is unused.
Send help. But you will see, you know, just how they use verbal behavior to interact with one another. And so, we have a lot of different verbal operants. The two that I would say, and we can kind of get into all of them, saying kind of what they are, but the two that I really see are one, interverbals, how they engage in conversation. That probably is number one. And again, you see a huge disparity between how different people engage in interverbals.
Oh, oh my goodness. Yes. The awkward pauses, those long breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew,
I
who,
know. I know.
dear sweet Matthew. He, so yeah, he does not use introverbals, but we have some like really good examples of introverbals.
Yes.
Like, with Johnny and Amy. They were
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, asking questions. Where do you want to go on a trip? What do you like? Tell me about your childhood. They get into some
Yep.
really good examples of that. I think they
Mm-hmm.
are, and I mean, we see that throughout their relationship is that
Yes.
they're really good at communicating.
Spoiler, it does continue.
Yeah. And just pause here if you haven't watched
Right.
the show.
Oh shit, I was supposed to say that before. Oh, am I allowed to?
Don't Google it. But it's like a natural conversational flow. So I am also a speech therapist, and so I wanted to put this in here that a natural conversation average gap, like when we have a pause to finish a sentence, it's about 200 milliseconds. And I'm really wondering if it's longer in the pods because you're not getting any of those other feedback. You're not looking at body language, anything like that.
Yeah.
What other couples would you say like really did good interverbals?
I would say, I almost would say Jimmy and Jessica. I felt like they had really good interverbals, which is interesting. But like when I was rewatching, so I actually rewatched the pods just a couple days ago, and I was like looking at their level of conversation, and I do feel like they were able to ping off of each other pretty well in convo. And I feel in general, not as much, I'm not going to focus on the men, but AD, just she is very, very good at like making conversations flow. She's reciprocal. She asks questions back. She gives time. So I thought hers were really good just in general.
She is just like a queen throughout this entire thing. I love her. I love that she's not like she's trying to go deeper on the surface. That deeper than the surface.
Yep.
Deeper on the surface. I promise. I do know what I'm talking about.
Class.
This is just my first class. I had to take something off the edge here.
Right.
But yeah, so I think she does a really good job. And I think,
Agreed.
and I love when she says for Matthew, like he's a pistachio.
1000%, which a great nut. But sometimes, especially, have you ever had a pistachio where like the shell, there's not like a good like slit between the two shells and you like can't get your fingers in there to pop it?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I just buy them pre-shelled. I don't want to wreck my manicure.
You know what? That is the most Lauren response, and I love you for it. Meanwhile, I won't show you my nails. I am getting in there with pistachio shells.
I literally have a bag of uncracked pistachios.
Oh my God. I love it. Honestly, respect
they're not uncracked. They're already pre-cracked. That's what I'm trying to say. I buy them pre-shelled. But but yeah, she is like getting her nails in, trying to crack Matthew. And I think she does a good job. But Matthew,
yes,
he shits the bed, for lack of a better term.
He does. He definitely does. And it is not pretty. But I did feel like through a majority of the pods, I was impressed with her ability to just keep on going, even though at first, because that's the other thing, like first impressions are so much, so much of a relationship and moving forward. And a lot of times, if we're being honest, first impressions are a lot of like physical appearance, how they interact with friends, how they like interact with like bartenders, if you're at a bar or whatever, you're like, good vibes. These first impressions are solely based off their verbal operants.
Yeah.
And their interverbals. And so it is, it's very impressive that she kept going with such a dull first impression with Matthew.
Yeah. Oh, and my question is, and I do want to know one thing is what number were they? Like, because I think Matthew, it seems like when we're talking about him, and I feel like we're almost like a little perseverative on him.
Yes,
But he
indeed.
did he just brings a lot to the table for us to
Yes.
unpack. Um, but what number was AD when he went in to talk to her?
Mhm.
Because he seemed to relax more. He was taking off his coat, he was taking off his tie.
True. That is
Um,
very true.
so I'm wondering if we had any like adaptation of like
Mhm.
he's like, I'm tired of this. Like I might as
Yeah,
well crack. Um
absolutely.
just crack that pistachio.
Mhm. No,
Um
I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, even when you do anything for the first time, no matter who you're doing it with or whatever, if it's something that you're like excited about, nervous about, whatever, the first time is going to be, you're slowly going to get more comfortable.
yes.
So,
I hope
probably like us,
yeah, probably like us because I like
probably
definitely
like
doubled
us.
up on deodorant today.
You know what? I'm sitting here being like, did I even put any on?
I had that the other day. Like
I will keep
I
my arms down.
yeah. Oh, no,
And
I keep a stick in my car just in the chance that I'm like out and about and I'm like, "Oh shit, I forgot."
there is honestly no worst feeling once you realize it and you're like, because there's no way to like get your mind off of it until at least for me, until I
Oh,
put deodorant on.
yes. Exactly. It's like a rock in your shoe. Like you feel it,
Yes.
you smell it. It's
Yep.
yeah.
Even though it might be little and no one else might notice, you notice.
Yes.
You
Okay.
notice.
You
So,
do know.
anyhow,
Back to our verbal operants. Can we
yes.
talk about manding? Because
Yes.
manding is a huge thing we see here, and it is requesting. In
Mhm.
ABA terms, it is just being able to say what you want.
Mhm.
I feel like this is really interesting with like Jessica and Jimmy talking about,
Mhm.
hey, what do you want? We also
Mhm.
see it with some of the couples that don't go on. Like in the first episode, they're like, what? How many kids do you want?
Yep.
Like they're manding for like and one guy I think he says like a bushel.
He did. Like a dozen, a
Yeah.
bushel.
I actually had to
First of
look up
all,
how much is in a bushel.
how much is in a bushel?
I think it's 12.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
I'm
Okay. Dozen bushel. Yeah, I have one child. A bushel? I can't even
I
fathom.
yeah, I don't think the book Cheaper by the Dozen actually applies to modern day economy.
No. Oh, God, no. Do you know how much those little puffs are? My son will go through those in 2 days. One little thing of them, $4. I'm like, get out of here with that.
Yeah, my dog only eats organic egg whites, so I can't.
Oh my gosh. Our dog eats better than all of us.
She
Egg
does. Yeah,
whites,
she's sleeping like right here.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Oh no, she gets Chick-fil-A once a week minimum.
God love her.
That's manding for her is when she's yelling at
Yes.
me to go to Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
but back to our verbal offerings. I mean, we're gonna hit again. Matthew in his list, like he's just
Mhm.
manding. He's manding for like what does he want? I
Mhm.
think he doesn't apply it, but um,
Mhm.
it's just really interesting. Like I want kids. I want a marriage. I want to live in a house. I want to travel. Not Jessica. Chelsea does a really good job with. I want someone who
Flexible
um
job.
has a flexible job because I
Mhm.
travel. So I mean, people online definitely roast her. Um,
Yeah. I know. She got it bad. Honestly, maybe unpopular opinion, but I feel like it's valid. I feel like she got some bad cuts.
I do too. Like a
You
friend of
know?
like I'm from North Carolina. A friend of a friend said they knew her and they said that she's like truly the kindest human.
That
And
does
they
not surprise me.
yeah, I feel like
I
she is
think
the friend.
maybe yeah. You go ahead.
I feel like she's the friend that's gonna show up if you're like, "Hey, I'm having a bad day," and she's like, "Hey, girl, I have a bottle of tequila. Let's take a drink and decompress."
And you need those friends. You need those friends.
Yeah,
But yeah, and I think that manding is so important. And I think that as you see the show progress, there's certain things that you're like, were those things discussed? Um, were they discussed while you were in the pods and you maybe gave an answer that you don't, generalize that outside of the pods? That means continue whatever you were communicating in the pods outside. Um, or were those things not discussed? And with something like this, as quickly as they move, they get to know someone, they get engaged, they go on honeymoon, they get married very, very, very quickly. So I think
4 weeks.
manding is so important.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And it's even like with Jeremy and Laura when they're breaking down, what do you want on like what does Christmas morning look like? I love
Mhm.
that. because that's such a simple thing that it holds a lot of meaning to different people. And I love that
Absolutely.
at this point he's like, we're doing fake Santa footprints, we're doing all of this. It's
Hmm.
just I love that. So
Yeah.
Mandy is beautiful. But
Yeah.
can we talk about them not seeing each other? So like
Yes.
deprivation state, which
Hmm.
is when something valuable is withheld.
Hmm.
I mean, one just the obvious, they can't see each other. So they're
Yeah.
deprived of like, what does someone look like? And we
And
get
it's,
some.
yeah, it's interesting to see how certain people are more accepting of the fact that they can't see each other, and how some people, and I get it. I mean, part of me gets it. Like, this is someone you're going to get engaged and married to. There is something to be said about physical attraction, you
Yeah.
know? And so, but at the same time, when you're signing up for the show, you're signing up for knowing that you're not going to see someone physically. And so it's interesting how different people handle the deprivation state.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, the big one, Clay
Oh,
and
yeah.
AD, when he's saying, I can't marry someone I haven't seen.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm into lips, I'm into a big booty and petite. I was like, oh God.
I
But and it's one of those things too that in my mind, I'm like, fine. Fine if that's like what you're into, whatever. But why'd you come on this show?
It's called Love is Blind.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. Like, I definitely have more of a type than, and there's certain that I might not, I mean, I don't know, but might not be as attracted to, but like, I don't know if I would go on the show if I was single. I'm not
Yeah,
sure I'd be great at it.
would you have been able to? Like, that's my thing.
I
Like,
don't know. I like to say I would. Like, my like answer would be like, "Oh my God, of course. Like, love is totally blind. I'd be fine not seeing someone and then getting married." I'm unsure. And more, not as much the looks as like, when they're in the pods, it's a very controlled environment. They're not, other people aren't around. They don't have the stress of work. They don't have family calling. They don't have their phones. We'll
yeah.
get into that. Like and so to me, it kind of is like, and we actually didn't even have a plan to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up. But it's kind of like, a lot of times in ABA, applied behavior analysis, you might work with a client and there's something called DTT, direct trial training, where you're sitting with the client and you're practicing similar or the same skills repetitively. And then you work on generalization. And a lot of times, sometimes generalization, which means like continuing that skill in different environments, a big focus is not always put on that. And it needs to be. I'm
Very much.
very big on generalization. And so with this deprivation state, you're in this controlled environment. You're not able to see people, this the person you're talking to. You're not around other people. You don't see how they handle their work stress, or, how they unwind when they come home from work or whatever. And so it's interesting to see how people handle that state and then how they continue in their relationship once that state is no longer,
Oh my goodness, yes. And I think
you
we
know?
see large changes. We'll definitely get into that into episode 2.
Yep.
But I wouldn't like, yeah, this is not a normal setting that you're seeing how someone interacts with their friends, how they treat like wait staff. That's a huge
Yeah.
thing for me. If someone's
Oh
like
God,
rude to a
same.
waitress, I'm like, no, that's
Yep.
gonna be me in a
Yep.
year. um,
Agreed.
I just like it's just it's interesting to see when they're in this deprivation state. And initially when we were writing this out and writing the show notes, it's I viewed it as deprivation of just you know you can't have any physical connection, you can't have any visual connection, but it also is the like great point on bringing up the environment around them. Like
Yeah.
they don't have their family. I talk to my mom every day for probably an hour. If that was an
Yeah.
issue with my partner, I'd be like, oh no, this just isn't gonna work.
Yeah. And even just the phones, like if we're being honest, like even just how people engage with their phones, that can really be a difficult thing to manage. And so it's interesting to see, they are in this insane deprivation state, which part of me is like, is great because it's allowing them to really focus on the person. Because we get so distracted day to day, like in our society, it's so easy to get distracted by the 500 things you have on your list to do, and the 500 things you're getting, stimuli from. And so it's interesting how people handle that. And we'll
Yeah.
kind of bring that up as we go through the three. So we're doing pods today, then we'll do honeymoon, and then we'll do after the honeymoon when they're back at home. And so we'll kind of bring on those things and just kind of say like how people continue to do once they were no longer in a state of deprivation.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
I have questions. I know this is we are stepping away from ABA here for a moment. What setting are they in? Like when I watch those episodes and I've gone back and rewatched the pods, it seems like they are in like a environment controlled, like you don't know what day it is, what time it
It
is.
looks like there's no windows.
Yeah, that's what I'm questioning. Like this
Yeah.
seems like kind of an
Are there
insane asylum.
clocks? I don't know. I don't know. And it's crazy to me too. And I know this sounds bad, but like granted, I did not grow up like middle school, high school, whatever, with a smartphone, but we've had smartphones for so long. We've had phones for so long. And it is crazy to me too. And I see the importance of not having phones, but that is such a drastic, change of like in these, but like in my mind, they're in like a warehouse
Yeah.
that has like they've just made into these like two living quarters, male, female, and then all these rooms for dates.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case. We need to get someone on this show.
Yeah,
We
if
need to get
anyone
someone.
has
I have
any
questions.
yeah, any feedback, please give it to us on this because I have so many questions on the setting.
So
Like,
many.
what are sleeping quarters like? I feel like is it like a dorm room? Are they like bunk beds, like military bunks? I don't know.
Yeah. No, we need those. We need those questions answered. But
Yeah,
it is very, it's very interesting to see how different people handle that state of deprivation. And I think that's a huge part of this. Whether it be a positive response from it or negative. But they are very much in an unnatural state there. And
understatement of the day.
I just can't even imagine. I can't.
No. Oh my God. Well, not talking to like my family, my friends, I would go batty. It would not be for me.
Oh yeah, no, I don't do well alone with my thoughts.
Same. Okay, but away from terrifying things
Mhm.
like they could be sleeping in a warehouse to positive things like positive reinforcement.
Yes.
We see a lot of this on the show. Positive reinforcement is when something is added to the environment to increase the behavior.
Mhm.
Um, so it is like one thing I saw flowers, presents, food. Like,
Oh yeah, the little bracelet
yeah,
that Chelsea and Trevor had, which was like an instant, positive reinforcement.
yeah,
Um,
instant feedback. I would also
yeah.
get super annoyed at that.
Back to needing someone on this show really quick. I also need to know how all of these things are arranged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like, "Oh my god, I remembered that you like sushi and here's sushi." Do they have just like a little errand boy that's like running to the store to get sushi and is like placing it in there?
Yeah. Well, do they do a preference sheet?
I wonder if they do a preference assessment, like an indirect or
I
informal preference assessment.
or even just they fill it out and say,
I
"Hey,
wonder
I
if they're
like
based.
flowers. I like," because I know you love
Yeah.
sushi, so
Love sushi.
you would put like all the sushi, and I'd be like,
I
"I like sushi, but I like the California roll. I like the fake sushi."
I would just put everything that's like the most expensive. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I would not just say like, "Oh, like whatever I ask for to drink." Like I am not asking for like bottom shelf stuff. I'm going to be like,
No.
"Yeah, yeah. I only like Camus. Only.
Only Camus, and I love
Only."
Dom Perignon. Just
Yes.
keep
Yep.
it coming.
Yep. 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 But
Um,
like I wonder who like is it just like I doubt that the contestants have to like pay for things for the other person.
yeah, well, I
Wouldn't you
think
think the show just supplies it?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, like, there's people also stepping away from their jobs, they're using their vacation times, like,
Mhm.
there
True.
there is a response cost to
Mhm.
coming onto the show that you're out not working, you're potentially not making an income, you're using vacation days. So, it's really the least the show can do.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong. So there's obviously those sites of like clear, tangible items that serve as positive reinforcement. Oh, you remembered. This is so sweet. Thank you. Increasing their desire to continue talking to that person, flirting, building their relationship, whatever. And then the other thing I noticed is, certain people, because again, all you can do is talk to someone. So you only have your sense of hearing, and you're like listening to what they're saying. And so there were some times in the pods where certain people were like, "Oh my God, well, I hope we can continue this because I love your voice." And it's interesting because I can guarantee in the real world, no one has ever said like, "I hope we can continue this relationship because I love your voice."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I have I
Have you told someone that?
I haven't told someone that, but I have distanced people for having a bad voice.
Okay. Okay. So a little positive punishment.
A little positive punishment, or on my side, positive. But I also, it's interesting when Jessica's like, "Oh, people say like I laugh like is it Fran Drescher
Yeah.
that she says?" Okay.
I would
And I
Her
feel
last
like
name
this is
always makes me feel like I have like a lisp of some sort.
yeah, it does. It
For
kind of
sure.
like blends, like blumbles
Right?
together. Blumble, I don't think that's an actual word.
We're gonna go with it.
Yeah, exactly. But the song like Video Killed the Radio Star?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
I feel like this is a video killed the radio star. Okay, now I have sun, which is horrid. But I really feel like you're having to rely on that voice. Like you can't be like, "Oh, I'm just like wonderful. I have like good like clay. Like I don't have like a nice
Mhm.
booty and nice
Uh-huh.
beautiful hair to distract you from my voice."
Yep. But it was just interesting how people, focused more on that than I feel like I've heard in the past. But you know what? I don't disagree with you though, because I've met a few people in my life where I'm like, "Whew, that voice is like nails on a chalkboard to me." But I haven't necessarily thought, "Oh my God, I love that voice so much. I want to be their friend because of their voice."
True. Yeah.
But
It's an
but
avoidance. Like I have literally walked out of a
yes,
movie because someone's voice was so bad in the movie.
I love
And I
it.
was like,
I
"Nope,
mean,
they had a list." And
yeah.
and I know it was the character because the actor themselves did
Mhm.
not have a list. But for
Uh-huh.
me, I'm like,
Can't do it.
like,
Can't do it. Can't do it. But it's also interesting. Lauren and I were talking about so with positive reinforcement, it's something that's added to the environment and it increases the behavior. And so here we're really seeing the increase of behavior is the increase of effort and attention and flirting and getting to know someone. Basically the increase of wanting to build a connection. And so positive punishment, something added and it decreases the likelihood of a particular behavior. So that again, something added to the environment and you're like, oh, it might, because that was added, it might decrease someone's, want and to pursue. And so I was thinking, and I'm curious what you think, Lauren. The way it works is there's like a guy's quarter and a girl's quarter. Okay. They go on their dates, they come back to their quarters and they'll chat. They'll be like, "How was your day?" Whatever. And I always found it so interesting because you get little tidbits from everyone and you hear one person saying, "Oh, I'm really into Chelsea." And then you hear another person saying "Oh, I'm really into Chelsea." And there was one time where Trevor walked in and Jimmy was there. And he was saying, "I think Chelsea's my number one and whatnot." I'm curious, and it probably varies, if hearing someone say, "Oh, Chelsea's my number one," if that creates an instance of positive reinforcement for you. So you're you heard it and you're like, "Oh, I want to continue, increase." Or if it's positive punishment, if you're like, "Oh, this person's already into them. So I just want to slide back." Um, but can you think of a situation where it's either way?
Okay, so I can think a lot of the positive punishment or
Mhm,
positive reinforcement
mhm,
where we see that in the guys' quarters and the girls' quarters. Because I think Clay and Matthew, we're back on the Matthew train.
1000%.
When Clay finds out that Matthew is talking to AD, and Matthew
Mhm,
goes, no, I'm missing up all the names. When Clay just goes bananas and was like talking
mhm,
to other guys, and he's saying, "If it was one of you guys, it'd be fine, but the fact that it's him, he gets really mad."
mhm.
Um,
And don't
I
you
think
feel like it makes him want to like even like mac harder at AD?
well, yes, yes, and I
Yeah.
think we see that again with
Mhm.
Chelsea and Jimmy.
Yes.
And because Chelsea was one, she had two very strong connections, and
Mhm.
like with Trevor, it is someone like she she really likes, they bond, they seem to have a lot in
Mhm.
common, they laugh a lot. Um, and I wonder if Jessica hadn't been talking to Jimmy as well, if we would have like seen Chelsea go with Trevor.
You know what? And I it was Chelsea, right? Yes. Wasn't it Chelsea and Trevor where Trevor asked Chelsea, if I would have asked you first, would you have said yes? So that's a whole other thing about
Yeah.
like the order at which something is presented. But it is so interesting those situations where there's like more than one person pursuing the same person. But ultimately certain things even in the real world are positive reinforcement for some people and it can be positive punishment for others, you
Yeah.
know? It's not
I,
always like receiving flowers is not always positive reinforcement for everyone,
exactly. Yeah.
you know?
No, that's very true. I like I think positive punishment when we look at it in the show. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head where it's like the couple, but I can think of with Jessica and Jimmy when she gives him
Mhm.
that letter and it's so sweet. I
So
I love
sweet. I
that
love her.
she is once again another queen, like crown
Yes.
her on our show. um that I just for her, I think it was meant to be positive reinforcement. Like and I would say all of this positive, negative punishment and reinforcement, it is in
Mhm.
the eye of the beholder.
Yep.
Because what someone is looking at as reinforcing or punishing could often be taken the other way.
Mhm.
But I think she viewed it as positive reinforcement, and it was definitely taken as positive punishment by Jimmy because you can
I
see his
know. You
mood
can
change.
tell. You can tell. And that's ultimately too like you might do something that you think is going to be positive reinforcement for someone and you don't know their history with reinforcement and punishment and their preferences and whatnot and you're like ooh it ends up serving the other and so I agree that letter was definitely intended as positive reinforcement but I don't think it was received that way.
Poor Jessica.
I know. God,
She's just amazing.
I hope she is she with someone currently. I need to stalk her
I know
Instagram.
I follow her on Instagram and she's like doing all these brand deals and she's going on another show.
Oh, is she? God, I
Yes.
love her.
Yes.
She's great.
Wonderful. Wishing her all the best.
All right.
But another thing of like positive punishment is Clay yelling at AD. Um, he's the it is positive because the yelling is something that's added to the
Added.
environment,
Mhm.
and AD kind of shrinks away.
Mhm.
And I say shrink away. Like her reaction, she's not like backing down. She's very firm
Mhm.
in this, but she
Mhm.
does pull away. When I'm saying
Yep.
shrinking, it is in that
Yeah.
sense. Um, for me, I would have acted the same way. If someone yells at me, instant shutdown.
Game over. Game over.
Yeah. Like you're not gonna
Yep.
you're not gonna raise your voice at me.
No. No. Yeah. So and then it's so interesting because and obviously everything is, looking back, you can see things in different ways, but I'm like so many of these things are like, oh, these have been like so punishing. But then I also feel like he displayed a lot of things that was reinforcing for her, like feelings and behaviors towards him. Um,
Yes.
so anyhow,
Yeah, I think Clay is someone like he is a fixer upper. Like Chip and Joanna Gaines come in and
literally.
just like
Yep.
do the fixer upper for him. He
Yeah,
is
we need a full gut. But the studs out are nice, so we can I'm just kidding.
move move the laundry room into the kitchen into the laundry room.
We need to knock down these walls.
Yes, yes. So it's just really I don't know, it's just interesting with positive with when we're looking at reinforcement and punishment how it's shown in this.
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
didn't see any examples of negative punishment. So
No,
something
and
is removed.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's kind of like with the show. So, with negative punishment and negative reinforcement, something is removed from the environment. And for reinforcement, you then see an increase in future behavior. And with punishment, you see a decrease in future behavior. And so I think that goes back to the deprivation state. They're already in a deprivation state. There's not really anything being removed from the environment. I guess in the one instance when Sarah Ann was like talking to Trevor, or not Trevor, Matthew, he like removed himself, like he was removed from their conversation.
Yeah.
And he chose to, but
Good
he was removed,
example.
and it was negative punishment because she was
Yeah.
like, thank God, bye, done, over.
Yes.
And I don't think anything else came from that. Obviously, editing, we don't know, but I would doubt it did.
Exactly. Yeah. For him, negative reinforcement. For her, negative punishment.
Yep.
Like, never going to see that date again.
But like that rarely happened.
Yeah.
Mostly it was things being added to the environment.
Exactly. And I also just want to know, like, how do they get each other messages? Like, oh, I want to meet you. Like, is it like someone comes and it's like, Sir Jimmy would like to see Mistress Jessica? Like, how do you do that?
Describe.
Yes. That's what I just imagine is like some like poor tech assistant is sitting there like, Chelsea, you're going to be here?
An intern. She's like, I don't get paid enough for this. Actually, I don't get paid at all.
Yeah, poor thing.
No, I was wondering that too. And like, so here's my other thing. Like, if say, Jimmy wants to, I'm just totally making this up. Like, Jimmy wants to do a date with Sarah Ann, but Sarah Ann is like, I'm not interested in Jimmy. Does someone have to go up and be like, Mr. Jimmy, I saw that you wanted to date with Sarah Ann, but she declined.
She declined. She thumbs down the request.
Yeah, or do they all have iPads and they like swipe left and right,
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And it's just like a general icon.
Yep. And then they match up like, oh, you have a match. So you go on a date. Besides that, nope.
Yeah, I don't know. And I just like the whole, I'm just logistically thinking like the carol, like I just feel like it's like booking a carol at the study cubicle in like library and college where it's like, oh, I go online and I'm going to reserve it.
I was not tracking at first, but yes, it is. I was like thinking of a lady named Carol. And I was like, what happens? Got it.
Lady of the streets. No. But I don't know. I just logistically, if anyone has any cues on the logistics behind this, please let us know.
Yes.
Okay. But consequences. Let's talk about consequences because there's a lot of them.
Yep. There is.
Okay, so consequences are the payoff or the outcome of a behavior. So I think the outcome of AD calling Matthew on his shit is like Matthew leaves the show. Like that's a consequence. But then the big one is
getting engaged.
If you like it, then you're gonna put a ring on it. Okay. Once again, things I never thought I'd do is sing. So getting engaged, we leave as we're leaving the pods, people are we have the couples of Jimmy and Amy. Johnny and Amy.
Look, I just agreed. Jimmy, Johnny, very similar. Johnny and Amy, Jimmy and Chelsea, Clay and AD. We have
Jeremy and Laura,
and
Kenneth.
We have Kenneth and Brittany.
Yes. And Brittany we haven't talked on her.
I was just going to say the same thing. She's an angel.
She is so sweet. Love her to death. I actually had her for one of our manding things because she's manding for what sort of relationship and a guy that she wants. I think she's a perfect example. So
oh my god,
shout out to you. Wonderful.
Love her.
Okay, so we have our 5 couples and
Yes.
their consequence is getting engaged.
Yep.
And the big thing is when the doors open, they see each other. Now,
can you even imagine? Can you imagine talking to someone for a few days, getting engaged,
no.
and then standing behind a door that just moves and you see your other, and the worst part, you have to walk or run up to them. They give Chelsea such shit for the way that she ran up to Jimmy. What are you supposed to do? I just feel like it's awkward all around.
It's like when you get engaged, you don't actually know what to do with your hands.
And you actually really know that person.
Yeah, I do know. Yeah. I can't imagine. This is the first time meeting them. Now, this is going to sound, I'm showing my ignorance for this is my first season watching the show. When they're standing in front of that white sheet, I thought it was going to be like one of like paper that they were going to jump through. That is
Honestly, can you imagine? Can
that's what I
you?
thought. And I was like, well, why are they all dressed up?
Because you can like see through, like you can like on the other
Yeah.
side see the silhouette.
Yeah,
I actually think missed opportunity.
it is.
Netflix, we've got a suggestion for you.
Yeah. I just pictured like my parents when we were kids would wrap the doorway into like
Oh my
where
God,
we
but they
had our
do that
first.
for Christmas.
Yes, and we would
I
like
saw that
jump
on
through it.
TikTok, and they did that pre-TikTok. I'm so impressed.
Yes. I'm very impressed with my parents with that one. Like, and there were 2 doors, so my sister and I could both jump through a door, so it
Oh
wasn't
my
like one
God,
group.
of
Yeah.
course. I have 2 sisters. I would have fought them if I thought that they jumped through more than I did.
Yeah. Yeah. They thought of that, I will say. Like
Smart.
props to Debbie and Mike here. But I thought they were going to jump through that paper. But it was a glass door. So way less
Thank
intense.
God they didn't jump through it. That would have been a real bad consequence.
Exactly. But I can't even imagine though getting ready like, hey, I've got to get ready to see my partner. And so do you feel like everyone is happy?
So I definitely think that there were some people that what they saw did not match what they imagined. And that's like hard because like you ultimately, again, like not that like looks are everything, but I can imagine that if you're like talking to someone for so long and you're like kind of imagining a certain thing, that it could be maybe a little bit of like, just again, not that it's bad or good, but just accepting something being different than what you thought it was going to be. But the answer to your question is no, I don't think everyone was.
Yeah. I think one example, I know obviously the main one, we'll touch on that in a moment, but with Johnny and Amy, when Amy's like, he wasn't the type of guy I normally go for at a bar.
Mhm.
And I love that they're like, this is amazing. Like we have such a great connection. Because with that, they were kind of surprised to see each other, but they run with it. And I love it.
Yep.
They're just so cute.
They are adorable.
Can we touch on the big couple
Jimmy and Chelsea?
Jimmy and Chelsea. Dear sweet Jimmy and Chelsea.
Have you seen, God, honestly, they didn't do Jimmy dirty. They did Chelsea dirty by the face that he's making when he hugs her. Have you seen that meme?
It's the photo in our, like, I haven't seen the meme, but I have the photo of that in our show notes for him.
Oh my God, yes.
Where it's like him just head over her shoulders. I'm pulling it up right now. Head over the shoulders, and you can see him like straight face. Like,
it is so.
yeah.
But yeah, so I definitely think that certain consequences of this experiment probably were more well received than others, but it's that unknown of like what exactly the consequence is going to ultimately be.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I question before we end with our final question here.
Yes.
Does Chelsea look like Megan Fox?
Okay, here's the thing. Can people tell that I have a soft spot for Chelsea? Here's the thing. Does she have like does Megan Fox have, I'm like, look, I'm trying to defend her and I'm like, does Megan Fox have a strong chin? Like Chelsea. The eyes, but no, she does not. Does she? But can I imagine if like someone was, yeah, I'm looking at a picture of Megan Fox.
Yeah, it's not an ideal, but so this is my thing. If you were to take like their driver's license, brown hair, blue eyes, potentially the same height.
Yep.
So in that sense, yes. But
that's just a bold statement though. Here's my thing. Someone may have once said it to her. I'm not denying that. But when someone asks, does anyone say you look like a celebrity? You better believe the only way I'm going to say yes is if I confidently feel that I am at least like close. I never in my wildest dreams would I ever saying you look like Megan Fox. That's a bold statement. She's like a sex icon.
Yeah. That is some big energy there.
Mm-hmm.
I would not say that. I don't think anyone has ever said I look like someone.
I know. I don't think so either for me.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, if someone asked me that, I'd be like, I don't know. I look like my sister.
Right.
That's who
People
I
say
look
I
like.
look like my older sister.
Yeah, exactly.
I look like my mom. But I
Medically
do.
speaking.
I know. I hate that she got so much shit over it though.
Yeah. I do feel like
Um,
that was mean.
yeah. It just, again, like, should she have probably, and I can only imagine, like, you're sitting in there talking to someone and you're wanting them to like you and you're like saying certain things to be like, oh, and then she probably, honestly, she probably went back to like the female quarters and was like, fuck, what did I do?
Oh, I would have instant verbal regret.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah. I would say that is like the verbal equivalent of the toothpaste just out of the tube, and I can't get it back in.
It's out.
It is out.
It
It
is
is
not
on
going
the
back in
toothbrush,
there.
and it is getting scrubbed. Uh, so, okay, last question before we wrap up this first inaugural episode.
Mhm.
A behavior support plan. So
Yes.
looking at how would we improve someone's behavior, how would we create more skill sets for them? Pods version. Who would you
Yes.
pick?
BSP. So, yes, if we had to write a behavior support plan on one of the contestants, I was like contestants, someone from the pods, who would we choose? And this is specifically focusing in on the pods. We'll do this for every single episode. I would say if I'm looking just at the pods, I choose Matthew.
Ooh, I love that
Right?
choice. He
So
has
we're
a
working
lot to improve on.
lots that we can improve on. So it's looking at like, interfering behaviors that we can work on decreasing, as well as building skill acquisition for some replacement behaviors. So what would we add in there?
Ooh, I would add something regarding topic maintenance.
Yes.
I would also look at adding being able to respond to questions.
Yep.
And I always
And
hate
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I always hate the word appropriate in any goals.
Mhm.
Because appropriate is such a subjective word. Like what's
Mhm.
appropriate to me is way different than what's appropriate to someone else.
Yep.
But I would have to really work to define a better stance on communication for him.
Yes. Well, and I think even just working on building some functional communication to articulate how he's feeling and his thoughts, because there were multiple times, like when he got up and just left the room without like saying anything. Like that could be something that just could say, like, hey, I'm not really feeling a connection. I want to pursue other people. Like in that setting, that's totally appropriate. Getting up
Yeah.
and leaving, come on, you're a grown ass man.
I feel like we need to have like a tolerance. Like
Yes.
we'd have to work on
Honestly,
building a
yes.
tolerance to someone that he didn't like.
Because his rigidity is like very intense.
Yeah.
So some flexibility, some tolerance, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
He's a perfect one. So that
I agree. I agree.
Not love him, but I think he has a lot to work on.
Yep.
He does annoy me a lot, but
Drives me a little cray. But but we'll get going on that behavior support plan.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have it ready for caregiver training.
Exactly. But well, thanks. This was a great first episode. So we hope to see you guys soon. And cheers.
Cheers. Look,
cheers to first episode and wrapping up the pods. So we'll see you in a couple weeks for episode 2 on the honeymoon.
Yes. Can't wait.